Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Bill Magnuson, CEO of Nasdaq-listed Braze, to discuss the importance of customer engagement in the midst of economic uncertainty. Bill, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You got it. And why is now the time for companies to focus on engagement?
So I think that customer engagement should be an always-on responsibility for brands. It's really about continuing to invest in the relationships that they're building with their customers over the long term, and doing so in a way that delivers valuable to the customer and then accrues value back to the brand. And I think that, a naive view of that would say that you should generally be interacting with people only when they're buying. But we actually know that, of course, the best way to kind of cement and form a long-term relationship over time is to have consistent attention on it and be there, not just in those moments where someone's showing up to get something from you, but actually focus on how you can deliver value to them throughout the longitudinal term of that customer relationship.
And Bill, how can companies prepare for consumers pulling back on spending should we enter a recession here?
Yeah, so I think that one of the most important things to realize in a pullback on spending is that consumers are still going to be buying and acquiring things. It just means that the impact of competition is going to be even higher. That work to actually get the share of the wallet is going to be all that much more difficult. And so for a brand to kind of focus on two things: one, how do you deliver in an impactful way in those moments that matter most? And two, how do you make sure that when you are actually trying to compete for that buyer's attention, that at no point along the way you're turning them off, right? Or that you're kind of putting your foot in your mouth as a brand, or you're otherwise, starting to annoy them, et cetera. These periods where a consumer may be a little bit inactive, it's tough to strike that balance to stay relevant and stay current with them through the relationship, while also not, showing up and knocking on the door at the wrong selling opportunities too often.
Right. And I've been hearing about this concept of first-party data when we speak with brands and advertisers. Explain to us what this rise of zero and first-party data is all about.
Yeah, so a lot of the conversation around first-party data has been focused primarily on the ad ecosystem, and a lot of that's been driven by the app transparency tracking framework, the ATT changes that have been driven by iOS and Apple with respect to the identifier for advertising. You've seen that impact on places like Facebook's advertising business, probably most notably. But actually, this idea around first-party data, which is effectively how do you create your own asset of understanding of who your customers are, I think should be extended for most brands, in that it's not just the data that you're using to understand is your advertising effective, which is where most of the industry conversation is right now, but it's also, more importantly, building up first-party relationship assets, which is a combination of understanding who your customer is and then having the right to communicate with them in a way that you don't need to pay for it every single time. And so when we really look at, first-party data and first-party relationships across the ecosystem, we see, the leading brands today are putting a huge amount of investment into making sure that they are controlling the conversation with their customer, that they have the right and the kind of opportunity to be able to continue that conversation so they can build stronger long-term relationships with those customers over the long term. And they do it in a way where they're not paying either in these pay-to-play advertising marketplaces or where aggregators, depending on what industry we're in, are controlling access to the consumer and then charging gatekeeper tolls for it.
Where does Braze fit in the ecosystem, and what solutions do you provide?
So Braze is a comprehensive customer engagement platform. And so what we allow brands to do is to automate in a very thoughtful way all of the communication with their customers across a variety of digital channels. What that literally means is, coordinating, orchestrating, personalizing over messaging channels like email, SMS, push notifications through mobile applications. It also spans into in-product use cases, looking at things like delivering surveys to people in product messages, in product inboxes, and really a really important part of Braze's differentiation in the customer engagement space is exactly that breadth. When you have a platform that might be tied to a specific channel or focused on it, you're looking around at your customer engagement issues and you've got to hammer everything that looks like a nail. But the reality is that, all customer engagement problems are not email problems. They're not SMS problems. They're about having a holistic conversation with your customer, about engaging with them across multiple platforms and channels so that when they're on their nonlinear journey as a customer, when they're interacting with your product and your service, and you can actually supplement that with great messaging experiences around around it, that you're there in all those moments to drive, again, not just the communication, but also the understanding. And so looking at each opportunity of customer engagement as that two-way street where the brand gains understanding and they cement the relationship, they deliver value to the customer. And anytime a customer finds value from a brand, that helps with their long-term attachment to it.
And finally, we had alluded to consumer spend trends earlier in this segment. What is your broader outlook for the macro environment and Braze for 2023?
Yeah, so we think that it's going to continue to be challenging out there in the macro environment. I think one of the big challenges is not necessarily the overall level of economic activity, but rather just the uncertainty that both consumers and businesses are experiencing right now. And so we don't have a crystal ball exactly, but we're definitely preparing for a future where that uncertainty continues, and one where there's going to be a strong drive to value, to high ROI solutions, to really kind of cementing and investing in future value. We think that there's a great opportunity for brands of all kinds, Braze included, to create meaningful separation from competitors through this time period. And that's one of the reasons why when we work with our customers, we're so focused on the importance of customer engagement, even through times like this. You asked me earlier, what happens when consumer spending slows down? Well, you still need to maintain a conversation with your consumer. You want to be ready and be on the front foot when things start to look rosier again in terms of the economic outlook. And I think that the biggest mistake that people could make is, you've got this kind of fog of war in front of you, if you will, not really knowing exactly where the economic conditions are going to go. If you respond to that by taking your hands off the wheel and your foot off the gas and you just wait for the fog to clear, when, as it does, you're not going to be ready. And to really stay on the front foot, be looking for opportunities for growth, even though it is a difficult period, I think that's really important both for Braze, and it's also something that we're really helping our customer base lean into as well.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make, Bill. I'm sure a lot of companies are going to learn a lot of lessons as we move through 2023. Appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.